Hello. I'm really glad you're here tonight. This hour is different from the rest of the day. It doesn't ask you to decide anything. It doesn't ask you to perform or explain or keep up. It simply invites you to lie still and let your thoughts move at their own pace. There is a particular kind of peace that comes with age. A peace that younger people haven't yet discovered. The peace of knowing that not every question needs an answer tonight. That not every loose thread needs to be tied. That some of the most meaningful things in life are felt rather than understood. Sensed rather than explained. Carried quietly rather than spoken aloud. Tonight, that quiet carrying will take you somewhere unexpected. Somewhere far from everything you know. Far from the noise of modern life. Far from schedules and screens and the relentless forward motion that fills our waking hours. Tonight, you're going somewhere ancient. Somewhere the world was once shaped by wind and tide and the patient gathering of people under one shared roof. Tonight, you're going to the atolls of Kiribati. You may not know that name. You may have never heard it spoken. It's pronounced Kiraabati, and it sits in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, scattered across an impossible distance of open water. 33 coral atolls and reef islands, most of them barely rising above sea level, thin slivers of land surrounded on all sides by ocean so vast, it defies imagination. The people who have lived there for thousands of years understood something that most of the world has forgotten. They understood how to be small and still significant, how to be fragile and still endure, how to build a life on almost nothing and find in that life something complete. And at the center of that life, for centuries stretching from roughly 1000 CE to 1800 CE and beyond, there was the Maneaba. So take a slow breath, let your body soften into the bed, allow the weight of the day to fall away from your shoulders. Feel the blanket settle over you like something gentle and certain. And before we begin this journey together, if this kind of honest, quiet reflection speaks to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Down in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. There's something deeply comforting about knowing we're all here together, scattered across time zones, united in these late hours when the world finally grows still. So settle in, adjust your pillows, find the position your body has been waiting for all day, and know that for the next hour, you're not alone. Whatever wisdom you're carrying tonight, whatever understanding you've earned, whatever truths rise to the surface when the lights go out, they're welcome here. Let's begin. Picture the ocean, not the ocean you've seen from a beach or a cruise ship or a photograph, not the ocean domesticated by piers and boardwalks and tourist umbrellas. Picture the real ocean, the ancient ocean, the ocean that has no edges, no reassuring landmarks, no sense that civilization is just over the horizon. Picture water in every direction, water meeting sky in every direction, and somewhere in that water, so low that you wouldn't see it until you were almost upon it, a thin green line, a strip of land no wider than a few city blocks, coconut palms leaning in the wind, breadfruit trees standing dense and dark, white sand so bright in the midday sun that you have to squint to look at it. And beyond the palms, beyond the sand, the lagoon, that impossible turquoise stillness enclosed by the reef, so different from the open ocean that it seems to belong to another world entirely. This is an atoll. This is where people chose to live. This is where people built something lasting. You're lying in bed right now. The covers are pulled up around you. And I want you to feel, just for a moment, what it might have felt like to live on that thin strip of land, to know that in every direction, as far as the eye could see, there was only water. To know that the ocean was not your enemy, but your provider. Not your obstacle, but your road. To know that the wind was not weather to be endured, but information to be read. A language older than any spoken tongue. A constant conversation between sky and sea, and the people wise enough to listen. The people of Kiribati listened. For centuries, they listened. They learned to read the stars with precision that still astonishes modern navigators. They learned to feel the deep ocean swells beneath their canoes and understand from those swells exactly where land lay, even when land was invisible to the eye. They learned that survival on an atoll required not just physical skill, but something deeper, something social, something collective. They learned that people needed a place to gather, and so they built the Maneaba. Say that word slowly, if only in your mind. Maneaba. Let it sit there for a moment. Let it settle like something with weight and meaning. Because it is a word with weight and meaning. It is not simply a building. It is not simply a meeting house. It is something far more layered than either of those descriptions suggest. The Maneaba was the center of everything. The literal and symbolic heart of each community on each atoll. It was where decisions were made and disputes were settled, where stories were told and history was preserved, where the young learned from the old and the old found purpose in teaching, where ceremonies were held and alliances were formed, and the invisible threads that hold a community together were woven and rewoven, night after night, gathering after gathering, generation after generation. But before any of that happened, before any of the human meaning could fill the space, there was the building itself. And the building was extraordinary. You're comfortable now. Your body is settling. Your breathing is slowing. Good. Stay with me as I describe what you would have seen if you had approached a Maneaba on a Kiribati atoll 800 years ago. The structure rose from the ground with a kind of quiet authority. No stone, no mortar, no materials imported from distant places. Everything you see was gathered from the island itself, from the ocean itself, from the resources that the atoll offered and that careful hands knew how to use. The frame was constructed from timber, carefully selected, carefully shaped. Coconut palm wood, pandanus wood. Wood that had been tested by generations of builders who knew exactly which pieces would hold and which would yield to the wind. And there was always wind. This is something you need to understand about life on a Pacific atoll. The wind never stops. It is constant. It is present in every moment of every day. The trade winds blow across the open ocean with nothing to interrupt them. No mountains, no forests, no continental land masses to slow them or redirect them. They arrive at the atoll with full force, and they move through everything, through the palms, through the grasses, through the spaces between buildings, and through the Maneaba itself. The people who built the Maneaba did not fight the wind. They understood it. They designed around it. They worked with it the way a wise person works with anything that cannot be controlled, with respect, with attention, with a willingness to yield where yielding is necessary and stand firm where standing firm is required. The roof of the Maneaba was thatched. Layer upon layer of pandanus leaves, dried and woven with a precision that took years to master. The pandanus tree, with its long spiky leaves and its strange aerial roots, was one of the most important plants on the atoll. It provided food, it provided material for weaving, and it provided the thatch that kept the rain out and allowed the wind to pass through without destroying what human hands had built. The layers of thatch were thick. impossibly thick by the standards of what a single leaf could accomplish. But woven together, overlapping, bound in patterns that had been refined over centuries, they became something close to permanent. A thatch roof that was properly maintained could last for decades, could outlast the people who built it, could stand through storms that bent the palms nearly horizontal and turned the lagoon into white foam. You're breathing slowly now, in and out. The covers are warm. The world outside your window is quiet. And somewhere, in the deep memory of the world, wind is moving through pandanus thatch. Dried leaves rustling. The sound of it is almost like rain, almost like breathing, almost like the sound a vast and living thing makes when it settles in for the night. The Maneaba had no walls in the way you're imagining, or rather, it had something more sophisticated than walls. The sides of the structure were open, or could be opened, allowing the trade wind to flow through the interior, keeping the gathered people cool in the tropical heat, carrying away the warmth of many bodies in a small space. But when storms came, when the wind turned fierce and the rain came horizontal across the reef, panels of woven material could be lowered, creating protection without eliminating the fundamental openness that made the space what it was. A space that breathed, a space that was part of the landscape rather than separate from it. A space where the boundary between inside and outside was intentionally blurred, because on a coral atoll, there is no real separation between the human world and the natural world. The ocean is always audible. The wind is always present. The stars are always visible through gaps in the thatch or over the open sides of the structure. The Maneaba acknowledged this. It was built to acknowledge this. The architecture itself was a statement of philosophy. We are not separate from this place. We are part of it. We live within it, not above it. Lie still now. Let your body sink a little deeper into the mattress. Feel the support beneath you, the solidity, the stillness of a room that does not move. And imagine the opposite. Imagine lying in a place where everything around you is in motion, where the thatch shifts and settles in the wind, where the frame of the building creaks gently, not from weakness, but from the designed flexibility of a structure that knows how to bend without breaking, where the sound of the ocean is never more than a few hundred feet away in any direction. This was the world of the Maneaba. Movement without instability, sound without chaos, constant sensation without overwhelming discomfort. The people who gathered there were accustomed to it. They had grown up with it. The wind was not background noise to them. It was conversation. And the Maneaba was where the most important conversations happened. Within each Maneaba, space was organized with great precision and meaning. Different families, different clans, occupied different sections of the structure. These sections were not arbitrary. They were determined by lineage, by history, by the particular relationship each family group held to the community and to the land. A person's place within the Maneaba reflected their place within the social order, not in a rigid or punishing way, but in a way that gave everyone a location, a belonging, a sense of where they fit in the larger pattern. You understand something about this, even if you've never sat in a Maneaba. You understand what it means to have a place, to belong to a group that has history and continuity, to sit somewhere specific and know that this is your spot, that this is where your family has always sat, that the people around you are not strangers but extensions of a story that began long before you were born and will continue long after you are gone. The elders sat in the positions of greatest honor, the unimane, the old men whose knowledge and judgment were the foundation of community decision-making, occupied specific places within the Maneaba that everyone recognized and respected. Their wisdom was not abstract. It was practical. It was earned. They knew the stars and the currents. They knew which families had obligations to which other families. They knew the history of disputes and the history of alliances. They held in their minds an entire social world that had been passed down orally, through story, through ceremony, through the ritual repetition of important events in the gathered space of the Maneaba. Young people listened. Children sat at the edges and took in everything. They absorbed the cadence of debate, the structure of storytelling, the particular way that important truths were communicated not through direct statement, but through narrative, through example, through the telling of what had happened before, so that what was happening now could be understood within a larger frame. This is something that older people understand deeply. The way wisdom travels through story, the way the most important things cannot be explained directly, but must be experienced sideways, through the telling of something that happened to someone else, in another time, under different circumstances, that somehow illuminates exactly what you're going through right now. The Maneaba was built for exactly this kind of transmission. Your eyes may be growing heavy. That's good. That's exactly what should be happening. Let them close if they want to close. You don't have to hold on. The story will continue regardless. The wind will keep moving through the thatch. The elders will keep speaking in their measured, unhurried way. The night will keep deepening around the gathered community. And beneath the floor of the Maneaba, beneath the carefully swept earth where all of this human gathering took place, something else was growing. The Babai pits. This is where the story goes deeper, literally deeper, into the ground, into the strange and patient world that existed below the surface of the atoll. Babai is a giant taro plant, Cyrtosperma mercusi, a plant so large that a single corm, the swollen underground stem that is the edible part, could weigh dozens of kilograms. A plant that grows slowly, over years, sometimes over decades. A plant that requires constant care and considerable knowledge to cultivate successfully on a coral atoll, where the soil is thin and the fresh water is scarce, and the conditions are, by any reasonable assessment, not particularly suited to growing anything at all. But the people of Kiribati grew babai. They grew it in pits dug deep into the atoll substrate, down through the coral rubble, down to where the fresh water lens sat just above the salt water that saturated everything below. They lined these pits with organic material, rotted vegetation, fish scraps, everything that could provide nutrients to a plant trying to grow in conditions that should have made growth impossible. And they tended these pits with extraordinary care. The Babai pits were not just food production. They were inheritance. They were investment. They were a statement of continuity across time. A family's Babai pit was among their most valuable possessions. The largest, oldest plants had been growing for generations. A corm that a grandfather had planted and tended, that a father had continued to cultivate, that a son now watched over, that a grandson would eventually harvest for a ceremony of great importance. The Babai carried time in its flesh. It was not just food. It was accumulated care. It was proof that a family had been here, had worked this ground, had invested in a future they would not live to see fully realized. This is something you know. You know what it means to invest in something whose full flowering you may not witness. You know what it means to plant something for people who come after you. You know the particular quality of care that goes into long-term tending. The patience required, the faith required, the willingness to do the work without knowing exactly when or how the results will arrive. The Babai pits ask for exactly this, and the people of Kiribati gave it without hesitation, because they understood that their lives on the atoll were not just their own. They were part of a continuous human presence on a fragile piece of land surrounded by an enormous sea. Every generation owed something to the previous one. Every generation built something for the next. The Maneaba and the Babai pits were connected in ways both practical and symbolic. The largest, most significant Babai were brought to the Maneaba for ceremonies, feasts that marked important transitions, the resolution of major disputes, the welcoming of visitors from other atolls, the commemoration of events that needed to be remembered collectively. The Babai, slow-grown and carefully tended, became part of the ceremony of gathering. Its presence at the feast was a statement. We have been here long enough to grow this. We have cared for this place long enough that this place cares for us in return. Breathe slowly, in and out. The night is deepening around you. The first section of our journey is nearly complete. You've traveled a long way already, across the open ocean, onto the thin strip of coral land, into the gathering space where wind moves through thatched walls, and elders speak in the measured cadence of people who know that the most important things take time. You felt the ground beneath the Maneaba, the deep pits where patience grows in the dark, where years of care become something that can nourish an entire community on a single important night. And the wind is still blowing. It never stops. It moves through the palm trees and over the lagoon and through the open sides of the Maneaba, and it carries with it the smell of the ocean, salt and something else, something alive, something that reminds you that the world is vast and ancient and has been holding people in its care for far longer than any of us can fully comprehend. Rest here for a moment, in this space between sections, in this gentle pause between the first part of the story and what comes next. The Maneaba is still there in the darkness of your imagination. The thatch is breathing in the wind. The elders are settling into their positions. The fire, if there is a fire, is casting its particular orange light across faces that carry the whole world in their expressions, whole lifetimes, whole histories, whole understandings of what it means to be human in this particular place at this particular moment. You are exactly where you need to be tonight, under your own covers, in your own bed, in your own place in the world, carrying your own history, holding your own echoes. When you're ready, we'll continue. The Maneaba is still waiting for you. You left it just a moment ago, or perhaps you never fully left it at all. Perhaps some part of you has been sitting there this entire time, in the warm darkness, listening to the wind move through the pandanus thatch, feeling the particular quality of air that exists inside a structure that breathes. That part of you has been patient. It has been resting in that gathered space, surrounded by the quiet presence of people who understood something essential about what it means to live a life that matters. Now you're going back, deeper this time, further into the night of that ancient atoll, further into the world that existed there for 8 centuries, quietly, deliberately, beautifully, sustained by wind and water and the extraordinary human capacity for community. Let your body settle a little more. Feel the weight of the covers. Feel the stillness of the room around you. You are safe. You are held. And the story is ready to continue. The gathering had been going on for hours. This is important to understand about Maneaba life. The gatherings were not brief. They were not efficient in the way that modern meetings are designed to be efficient. They did not have agendas with time slots. They did not have a chairperson watching a clock. They unfolded at the pace of human understanding, which is sometimes slow, sometimes circular, sometimes requiring long silences before the right words arrive. You're lying in bed right now, and the night is quiet around you. Try to feel that different quality of time, the Maneaba time, the time that does not push or demand, the time that simply opens like water, opening around a stone, finding its own path, arriving where it needs to arrive without forcing anything. The people gathered in the Maneaba understood that important things could not be rushed. A dispute that had been building for months could not be resolved in 20 minutes. An alliance between families that would shape the next generation could not be formed through a hasty agreement. The kind of trust required for survival on a small atoll, where every person's actions affected every other person's life in direct and immediate ways, that kind of trust had to be built slowly, conversation by conversation, gathering by gathering, night after night under the same thatched roof, breathing the same salt air, listening to the same wind. And so they gathered, and they spoke, and they listened, and they were quiet together in ways that were just as important as the speaking. You know something about meaningful silence. You've lived long enough to know that the most important moments in relationships are often the quiet ones. The times when nothing was said, but everything was understood. When sitting beside someone in stillness communicated more than any words could have managed. When the silence itself was the conversation. The Maneaba held those silences too. The Unimain, the elder men of knowledge and standing, were not men who spoke constantly. Their authority did not come from filling the air with words. It came from knowing when to speak and when to remain still. From understanding that a silence placed in exactly the right moment could carry more weight than an entire speech. Their restraint was part of their wisdom. Their patience was part of their power. And the women. It would be incomplete to speak of Maneaba gatherings without speaking of women, even though the formal seated positions of deliberation were largely held by men. Women were present. Women were watching. Women were the keepers of information and relationship that flowed through the community in ways that formal gatherings could not fully contain or account for. The social fabric of atoll life was woven from both, from the formal deliberations inside the Maneaba and from the countless conversations that happened in other spaces, at the edge of the Babai pits, along the beach at the end of the day, between families connected by marriage and memory, and the long, complicated intimacy of people who have lived alongside each other for generations. Nothing in a small community is simple. Nothing is one-dimensional. And the Maneaba, for all its formality, for all its structure and assigned positions, was surrounded by a world of human complexity that it both reflected and shaped. Breathe in, breathe out. The thatch is moving above you. The wind has shifted slightly, the way it always does in the night hours, as the land cools and the ocean remains warm, and the air between them begins to move in patterns slightly different from the daytime trade winds. The atoll wind patterns deserve their own moment of your attention because they were not simply weather. They were a calendar, a map, a language. The people of Kiribati read the wind the way others read written text, with comprehension, with interpretation, with the ability to understand nuance and implication, and what was being communicated beneath the surface of what was immediately apparent. The trade winds that dominated daytime life on the atolls blew from the east and northeast, consistent and reliable, the kind of wind you could plan around, the kind of wind that made ocean navigation possible across enormous distances. These winds shaped the way canoes were built. They shaped the routes between islands. They shaped the timing of inter-atoll voyages, the remarkable journeys that connected the scattered communities of the Central Pacific into something larger than any single atoll could contain on its own. But at night, as you're experiencing right now, the wind changes, the land breeze comes, cooler, different in direction, coming off the narrow strip of atoll land and moving out toward the lagoon and the open sea. This shift was felt inside the Maneaba. The gathered community felt it on their skin. They had felt it every night of their lives. It was as familiar as their own breathing. The night wind carried different things than the daytime wind. It carried the smell of the interior of the atoll, the dark vegetation, the coconut palms releasing their particular scent in the cooler hours, the faint sweetness of pandanus fruit, the earthier smell from the Babai pits, where slow growth continued in the darkness underground. The night wind was the smell of home distilled, the smell of everything that made this particular atoll different from every other piece of land in the ocean. When visitors arrived from other atolls, after days or weeks at sea, it was sometimes said that you could smell your home island before you could see it, that the wind carried the specific signature of each place, and that someone who knew the atolls could recognize where they were approaching by what the wind told them. This is not metaphor. This was practical knowledge, navigation knowledge, the kind of embodied understanding that cannot be written down and cannot be taught in a classroom, and can only be learned by living within a place long enough that the place becomes part of you. You have your own version of this. There are smells that take you home instantly. The particular smell of a house you grew up in, of a kitchen where meals were made that you haven't tasted in decades, of a person you loved whose physical presence exists now only in memory. The nose reaches back further than the mind. It bypasses the careful structures of thought and delivers you directly to the lived moment, to the sensory reality of a place and time you thought was gone. The Maneaba gatherers knew about this kind of memory. They lived inside it. Every gathering was layered with the memory of every previous gathering in the same space. The same smells, the same wind patterns, the same quality of light in the evening hours before darkness fell completely and the stars took over the role that the sun had played. Every new gathering was also a remembering of every gathering that had come before it. This is what oral tradition really means. Not just the formal stories, not just the named narratives that get transmitted from elder to young person in deliberate acts of teaching. It means the accumulated sensory memory of a place, the knowledge that lives in the body rather than the mind, the understanding that cannot be extracted from its context because it is the context. It exists only inside the experience of being in a particular place with particular people at a particular time. Your eyes are heavy now, very heavy. That's right, let them close completely if they haven't already. You don't need to see anything. You're already in the Maneaba. You've been there for a while now. You can feel the wind. You can smell the night air. You can hear the particular sound that gathered people make when they are comfortable together. Not silence exactly, but something like silence, a shared breath, a collective ease that is unmistakable once you felt it. The stars were beginning to appear. On an atoll, with no artificial light, with nothing between you and the sky except the open air, the appearance of stars in the evening was not a background event. It was a foreground event. The stars came out and they demanded attention. They changed the quality of the world completely. The sky that had been blue became black and then became something else entirely. Something almost crowded. Something so full of light that it was difficult to believe it had ever been empty. The navigators among the gathered community knew every star by name. Not the names we use now, not the Greek and Latin designations of Western astronomy, but their own names, names that carried within them the practical information needed to use the star for navigation. Names that told you which direction it indicated, at which time of year, and what conditions to expect if you were sailing toward it. The stars were a library. The sky was a book. And reading it was not a special skill possessed by a rare few. It was a common literacy. Children learned the stars the way children in other cultures learn the alphabet. Imagine carrying that kind of knowledge in your mind. Imagine walking out into the night and having the sky speak to you in a language you've understood since childhood. Imagine looking up and knowing, with confidence, not just where you are, but where you could go. Knowing that the ocean, which looks like an obstacle to most of the world, is actually a road. That the stars above it are signposts. That your canoe and your knowledge and your courage are sufficient to cross any distance this ocean has to offer. This is what the young people in the Maneaba were being prepared for. This is what the stories of the elders were building toward. Not just the management of disputes and the negotiation of alliances, but the cultivation of a kind of human confidence that is rare and precious. The confidence that comes from genuine competence, from knowing your world so completely that it holds no terrors, from being so deeply embedded in a place and a practice that fear loses its grip and capability takes its place. You have felt this in your own life, in your own field of competence, whatever that field has been. There have been moments when you knew exactly what you were doing, when years of accumulated experience suddenly showed their full value, when something that would have terrified your younger self felt manageable, even natural, because you had done the work and the work had changed you. The confidence that lives in genuinely earned competence. That is what those young people in the Maneaba were being given. Night by night, story by story, gathering by gathering. The feast was part of it too. When the Babai was brought into the Maneaba for a ceremonial gathering, when the great corn was carried in by the family that had tended it through years of patient cultivation, the feast that followed was not simply a meal, it was a demonstration, a proof of something. Look at this. Look at what we have grown here in this difficult soil. Look at what patience produces. Look at what care, sustained across years and generations, can bring into being on a coral island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The preparation of Babai for a feast was its own ceremony. The cooking methods had been refined over centuries. The baking, the grating, the mixing with coconut milk that transformed the starchy corn into something fragrant and nourishing. The distribution of portions within the Maneaba followed the same protocols as the seating arrangement. Specific portions for specific positions. A physical enactment of the social order. Not a hierarchy of worth, but a map of relationship. A reminder of who was connected to whom, and in what way, and with what obligations flowing in which directions. Eating together is one of the oldest human ceremonies. You know this. You've sat at enough tables, shared enough meals, understood enough about what it means to break bread with someone, to know that the sharing of food is never just about nutrition. It is about trust, about belonging, about the declaration that we are, in this moment, part of the same group, that your hunger and my hunger are not in competition, but are addressed together by the same provision, from the same source. In the Maneaba, this ceremony happened in the most distilled form. The food had been growing for years. The preparation had been careful and deliberate. The space in which it was consumed was charged with history and meaning. And the people eating together were not strangers sharing a table out of proximity. They were a community that had chosen each other, generation after generation, in the most fundamental way available to human beings. They had stayed, they had built, they had tended the pits and repaired the thatch and maintained the gathering place and kept the knowledge alive and showed up, night after night, to participate in the ongoing project of being human together on a fragile strip of coral in an enormous sea. Breathe very slowly now, in and out. Feel your body becoming heavier. Feel the mattress receiving your weight completely. Feel the covers settled over you like something ancient and warm and completely trustworthy. The stories that were told in the Maneaba on the longest nights were the stories that explained everything: where the people had come from, how the atolls had been found, what the ancestors had done to make survival possible, what was owed to those ancestors, and how that debt was to be honored by the living. These were not entertainment. They were instruction. They were the operating system of the community, the fundamental code that made everything else function. And they were told in a way designed to be remembered, with rhythm, with repetition, with the particular cadence that the human memory finds easiest to hold. The stories move through the body as well as the mind. Some were accompanied by movement, by the formal sitting dances, the tebino, where the upper body became the instrument of expression while the lower body remained still, a perfect metaphor for the Maneaba itself. Rooted, present, expressive within appropriate bounds, moving without being unmoored. You have your own stories that explain everything. The stories you tell yourself about your life, the narrative you've constructed from the raw material of your experience, the through line you've identified that makes sense of choices that seemed random at the time and only reveal their coherence in retrospect. These stories are your version of the Maneaba tradition. They are how you carry your history and make it usable, how you extract meaning from what happened and use that meaning to understand what is happening now. The elders in the Maneaba were very good at this, at taking the long view, at seeing how the present difficulty was related to something that had happened 3 generations ago, and how the solution lay in understanding that relationship clearly, at holding time in a way that made the immediate crisis smaller and the larger pattern visible. This is the gift that comes with age, with surviving enough to have a long view, with having watched enough cycles complete themselves that you understand something about cycles, about how things that seem unique are often repetitions, about how the current moment, however pressing, is part of a larger story that was going before you arrived and will continue after you leave. The Maneaba held that long view. It was built from it. Every piece of timber that had been chosen by an ancestor and placed with care was part of the long view. Every layer of thatch woven by hands no longer living was part of the long view. Every Babai pit dug by someone who knew they wouldn't live to see the harvest was part of the long view. And the wind that had blown across those atolls for thousands of years before the first canoe arrived. The wind that had shaped the palms into their permanent lean. The wind that had built the reef by moving the water in its particular patterns. The wind that continued to blow through the Maneaba tonight, in the darkness, moving through the thatch of your imagination, carrying the salt smell of the ancient Pacific into this quiet room where you are resting. The wind connects everything. It moved across the water that brought the first people to the atolls. It filled the sails that connected one atoll community to another across hundreds of miles of open ocean. It cooled the gathered people in the Maneaba on warm evenings. It carried the voices of the elders across the open sides of the structure to where the children sat, listening at the edges. It carried the smell of the Babai cooking. It carried the sound of the tabino, the formal chanting that accompanied the sitting dances, out into the night air and over the lagoon and up into the sky where the stars waited, patient and permanent in their ancient positions. You are resting. You are almost there, in that place between memory and dream where the body has let go and the mind is floating, where the world you know and the world you've been visiting tonight are becoming indistinct from each other, where the wind moving through Kiribati thatch 800 years ago and the quiet of your own room tonight are somehow the same silence, the same peace, the same invitation to release what you're holding and simply be held. The last fires in the Maneaba are dying down to coals. This is how the great gatherings ended. Not abruptly, not with a formal declaration of closure, but gradually, the way the night itself progresses. One moment, there is conversation and presence, and the warmth of many people sharing a space. And then, slowly, gently, people begin to drift. The children fell asleep first, curled at the edges of the gathering, absorbed into sleep without the boundary of a formal bedtime. Then the younger adults. Then even some of the elders, their wisdom earned through long years, finally calling them to rest. The Maneaba allowed for this. It expected it. The gathering did not require everyone to be present at full attention for its entire duration. It was large enough and patient enough to contain the whole range of human states, from alert deliberation to drowsy presence to full sleep. The space held all of it without judgment. You are in that space now, somewhere between the deliberation and the dream, somewhere in the warm middle of the gathering where the fire has done its work, and the thatch is settled, and the wind is a lullaby, and the stars above are keeping watch so that the people below can rest. You've carried a lot of weight tonight, not just in this journey to Kiribati and back, but in your whole life. You've tended things that took years to grow. You've sat in your own version of the Maneaba, in every room where important decisions were made, every table where difficult conversations happened, every space where you showed up and participated in the ongoing project of being human with other humans. You've been both the young person listening at the edge and the elder speaking from a position of hard-won understanding. You've been the one who needed tucking in and the one who did the tucking. All of that is part of you tonight. All of those gatherings, all of those conversations, all of those silences that communicated more than words, all of those meals shared with people you loved, all of those stories told in the dark to help someone younger understand something that can only be learned through the telling. You are the Maneaba. You are the gathering place. You hold within yourself the accumulated wisdom of everyone who has ever sat with you, spoken to you, shared their knowledge with you, trusted you with their presence in the vulnerable hours. You are the thatched roof that has bent in the wind without breaking. You are the Babai pit, patient and deep, cultivating something slow and valuable in the dark. You are the wind reader, the star knower, the one who has learned to find home by feel, by smell, by the particular quality of air that belongs only to the place where your life has been lived. This is enough. This is more than enough. This is everything. The coals are orange now, almost gone. The thatch above is barely moving. The wind has gentled to something barely more than a breath. The lagoon is still. The stars are brilliant and uncountable and completely indifferent to human worry, which is exactly what you need from them right now. Indifference to your worry. Brilliant presence. The reassurance that the universe is large and old and continuing regardless, which means your rest tonight is not negligence, but participation. You are participating in the ancient rhythm of work and rest that has sustained every human community that has ever existed on this earth. The people of Kiribati knew this. They built a gathering place that was also a resting place, a space of deliberation that was also a space of dreaming, a structure designed to hold human consciousness in all its states, awake and alert, drowsy and drifting, fully surrendered to sleep. Tonight, you have gathered. You have deliberated. You have remembered. You have been present for something important. Now it is time to drift. The fires die down, the stories settle, and the world grows still. Let your thoughts drift away like embers on the wind. The Babai grows quietly in the dark below. The thatch breathes above. The trade wind carries everything gently out across the lagoon, across the reef, across the open ocean, until all of it disperses into the enormous, patient, endlessly receiving sky. You've journeyed far through time tonight, across the Pacific, into the gathering, into the deep pits of patience and the high architecture of belonging, into the wind patterns of a world that knew how to read everything the air carried. Now it is time to journey into dreams. Close your eyes, breathe, let the last ember fade, let the last story settle into the ground like rain finding its way to the root. The Maneaba holds you, the wind is gentle, the stars are keeping watch. Let sleep find you.